Now, on Manx Radio Breakfast yesterday, we heard from Douglas Central, MHK and Corlett, who was urging the Department of Infrastructure to strike while the iron is hot over the introduction of 20-mile-per-hour speed limits in residential areas. It was after new restrictions were imposed in Port St Mary, and it appears the DOI may be doing just that. Infrastructure Minister Michelle Haywood joins us in the studio this morning. Now, Minister, we understand there are going to be some upcoming works in Douglas and Onchan. What can you tell us about that?
Good morning. I'd like to thank Mrs. Corlett. She's championed this all the way along, and her intervention yesterday sort of almost preempted us being able to go live with this. So the whole island residential streets will be covered eventually, but the next phase of doing this is covering Douglas and Onchan, and that goes out. The traffic regulation order will go out for consultation in the next couple of days. That will be live for 2 weeks. People can comment on it, but we have done already extensive consultation across Douglas. People might remember taking part in that a while back. So we know which areas we're covering, and really this is a chance to see what those areas look like. What we're doing is the arterial roads will be still flowing at 30 miles an hour, but residential roads will be limited to 20.
So which areas are we talking about?
We're talking about basically throwing a sort of almost like a cordon ring road around Douglas. All the residential streets will be covered. As I said, the arterial streets will still be 30 miles an hour, with the exception of the road running through Onchan. So particularly where we've got the pedestrian crossings there, and we know that we've had problems with traffic not actually recognising that pedestrians are there and not being able to stop in time. So that actually will become 20 as well.
I think we've heard from your predecessor when we talked about this that cost has been a barrier to getting this off the ground. How much is this going to cost?
It's actually, we've pared the scheme back. So when the scheme was originally thought of, it involved lots of changing streets and putting in traffic calming and speed humps and speed bumps, and we know that those are not liked. And I was on Port St Mary Commissioners at the time when this was discussed down there, and we absolutely refused to have the scheme that was first developed. This scheme is different. This scheme is really about changing signs, so actually the cost is relatively low. We're changing out the 30 mile an hour signs to 20 mile an hour signs. So there are some additional posts that will have to go in, but most of the places it's just swapping over signs. So the cost is low. We're not engineering any roads, we're not building speed bumps, we're not doing traffic calming, because that's not appropriate for where our buses go, and it's not appropriate for our historic towns either. It just doesn't suit them.
You said the cost is low. Do you have a rough figure?
I can get a figure for you. I don't have a number at the moment. I know that the scheme is due to be rolled out, so it is budgeted for that we roll it out in phases around the island. So this is the next phase to do. This will be the big one, but Douglas and Onchan is the largest area we're going to cover. But because we're taking the concept of setting almost like a ring road around it, the signs will be at the start of that, and so you'll know once you're inside it, so we don't have to do lots of repeat signage.
Now, putting speed limits in place is one thing. Enforcing them can be very much another. How are you going to enforce this?
It's a really light touch on enforcement, so we're not prevailing on the constabulary to go and do loads more work. One of the things we know is that it only takes one person to be driving through there at 20 miles an hour, and all the traffic following them will be doing 20 miles an hour. And so we're talking about educating the public about this is about making our community streets safer and nicer for people to be in. Even if you are a pedestrian and the traffic comes past you at 30 miles an hour, you can feel that whoosh of air, and it feels unsafe. And if you're walking small children and things along the pavements, that's just not nice. So the slower traffic speeds will make it a nicer area to be in.
And we've heard a lot in the last week about this coming into force in your own constituency in Port St Mary. What feedback have you had from residents there?
Mixed feedback, actually. I love the letter from somebody who said to me, this was really unnecessary to put this 20 in. You can't drive faster than 20 at this point anyway, so nobody's going faster than that, in which case it doesn't really make a difference. It's just a sign. And I know that there are some bits of that scheme that I'm finding difficulty staying. I've been used to driving it at higher speeds, but generally it's been welcomed. And I know particularly the school were concerned for a long time about the speeds around the school, and that's now quite like embedded inside the 20 mile an hour zone. So generally the feedback's been good.
Now, earlier this week we were speaking to you about Kroger and the hydrocarbons situation. In the last day, we've heard about government seeking engagement with a private company or suitably qualified government department to fulfil a role similar to that of the North Sea Transition Authority. This is essentially a regulatory role. Why is it that this has gone out now? What can you tell us about this?
It's an overlap. We were working at pace to deliver all the legislation and regulation that was needed in order for Kroger to progress, assuming that they would agree to extend their licence. And this advert was put in some weeks ago as part of that. So it really is an overlap. It's actually for a DEFA post, and there are 2 posts up. There's another one for offshore wind as well. And it's likely that any regulatory body that could deal with this for us would actually be the same in both cases. So it's just for an expressions of interest to know who's out there that could provide the services. But it is one of those, we haven't managed to cancel all of the work streams yet that were there as a consequence of dealing with Kroger's project.
So this isn't necessarily then any intent on government's part to continue exploring that?
Don't read anything into it. It's just that actually we were on the case and we were getting on with the job, and we haven't had time to almost stop and breathe this week and reflect on what now needs to happen in terms of what work streams can we drop and what work streams can we continue with.
Now, while you're here, Minister, there's always plenty to talk about with the Department of Infrastructure. So, harbour dredging, this has obviously been something very much in the news over the last few days, these tidal and depth issues. Manxman, the berthing issues on Saturday evening, a 7-hour crossing yesterday and 2 cancelled sailings. This is clearly a major issue for connectivity. On Monday, when you were here, you told us you were meeting with officers within your department to talk about this issue. It was a sort of matter of urgency. So this morning, where are we up to with Douglas Harbour being dredged and Manxman being able to arrive in Douglas unimpinged?
Okay, so the department is going to perform what's known as a capital dredge. And that involves a boat that's much larger than anything that we have, so assets that we don't own. But it would involve contracting in a company to come and do quite a serious dredge and take the levels down. That particular bit of mud where the Manxman got stuck, it's been known about since last year. And as I said on Monday, it was that unfortunate confluence of the high pressure that pushed the tide down further and the very low tides that you get this time of year. We know that is due to repeat again at the end of the month. Not necessarily the high pressure, that's a weather, and I can't predict that far ahead. I'm not that good. But certainly the tide will be really low at the end of the month as well, and it will coincide with the schedule that the steam packet have. They're aware of that, and I think we can see them moving their schedule around. And to be fair, if you go back over the history of the steam packet, schedules did used to move fairly regularly for tidal conditions in ports, and it's only in recent years that we've got to a more settled schedule. So they're back to doing a bit of more planning around that, but the plan is, from the department's perspective, is to get that dredge done, to get the levels down in the harbour.
Any timescale on that?
We're working on it at speed at the moment. We already have a contractor that we use for dredging in Liverpool, and we're busy talking to them. So we're just working through that process at the moment.
And for those listening to us now who are looking at travelling on the Manxman in the next few months, or whenever it might be actually, for visitors to the Isle of Man, will this be a more regular dredging process to avoid these kind of issues we've had over the last few days happening again?
The capital dredge actually doesn't need to happen that often. It's the equipment that the harbours have can really, I was going to say, it like smooths out the icing. It can level off in the harbour, but it doesn't remove large amounts of material. The capital dredge will remove large amounts of material, and then gradually that will fill back up as sediment gets carried down the river or as sand gets washed back into the harbour, depending on the weather conditions. And so that will happen over a period of time. So it just hasn't happened for a while, and we need to catch up with it.
Yeah, will there be a more sort of regular programme in place?
I think the department is alive to the fact that it needs to keep a better eye on the depths in the harbour and make sure that they're responding a little bit quicker next time.
Because as we say, regarding connectivity, this is obviously a major issue, something you as Minister of DOI must surely be aware of.
Yeah, I think somebody helpfully suggested on social media that I should go down and sort it, and I'm quite happy to go and get my dive kit and take a spade down there. Might take me a while though, but in the meantime, let's get the professionals in to do it.